10-second security tip, go.
So this one's for the vendors for the first time. Typically it's for the folks in security. But if you want to truly successfully sell to a CISO, get inside their mind. They tend to be very inquisitive, fascinated by different ways of looking at things, shiny objects. Don't drink your company's Kool-Aid. Come up with really awesome, innovative ways to pitch and present what you sell to them to grab their attention.
It's time to begin the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. Recorded in front of a live audience in San Francisco.
What? Play it from the top.
It's time to begin the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. Recorded in front of a live audience in San Francisco.
Welcome, everybody, to the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast. My name is David Spark. I am the producer and co-host for this show. Sitting to my immediate left right here, that is Mike Johnson. He is my co-host for the show. You probably recognize him. We are available at CISOseries.com. We're also on Reddit, on the CISO series on Reddit, which I don't say enough. Our sponsors for today's episode, which you can see on this gigantic screen behind me, are CyberArk and Vulcan Cyber. You're going to hear a little bit more about them later in the show. And we're recording right now in front of a live audience in San Francisco. Prove it to them. All right. This episode, as I said, is going to drop March 3rd. So the people listening to this will be on March 3rd or later. That happens. But I also want to mention, if anyone is going to be in Boston or New York next week, we are doing live shows in New York and in Boston on the 3rd and the 5th. So please come out to those. And all information obviously available on CISO Series. But I want to mention one quick thing here before we really jump into the meat of the show, Mike. I got this from Nir Rothenberg of Rapid, and he sent a pitch that he received from a vendor that began, "I saw you're connected to Mike Johnson and David Spark on LinkedIn. We're fans of their show here. I have received many of these where people are using our show as a means to pad a pitch."
As long as they're listening, as long as they're paying attention to what we're having to say, totally cool with that.
I am totally cool with that. So I think that's awesome that's happening in play. By the way, please feel free to plug us in any pitch that you make to a potential CISO. We're all for it. Or to just anyone randomly.
Just random, strangers
Yes.
on the street.
We need more listeners. All right. To my far left over here, sitting at the table, you heard at the beginning of the show, she is our guest, and she's been a guest on this show before, but this is the first time for a live show. Please, warm round of applause for the CISO of MailChimp, Olivia Rose.
Thank you, everybody. Happy to be here. What a great-looking audience.
How to become a CISO.
We often get the question of how do you become a CISO? Let's have that discussion, but move it to the actionable, let's start today, advice. So what could an individual do right now, I'm going to start with you, Mike, to develop the skills to be a cyber leader and make it clear to management that's what they're gunning for?
I think one of the important things is to not start too soon. So I think if you're very early in your career saying, I want to be a CISO, it's a very easy thing to say, but you're still early on in your career. So explore around a little bit and don't make that commitment. You can do amazing things in a security team as an individual contributor, you don't have to be the CISO. That said, if you want to be a CISO, if you've made that decision, if you're on board, what I would really say is being a generalist is really important. You know, Peter Liebert in a previous episode of the podcast was really talking about how being a generalist and having a lot of exposure in a lot of areas in security came in really handy for him when he finally became a CISO. So that's one of the pieces of advice is try other areas of security other than what is your go-to, other than what is your well-known background. Try and learn other areas. That said, I also think the people who are coming from an operational side, coming from incident response, I think there's a lot of opportunity to turn those skills into leading a security team. You're baked in reality. You've seen what's happening. You know what's going on. It'll really help you in that role. So and that's another thing
So
for advice
incident
I have
response is a good area.
Incident response, get that broad experience and try multiple areas.
All right, hold that. Let's move over to Olivia. Are there specific things anyone in this room could do to just start to demonstrate to themselves and to others, I'm ready to start moving up the leadership ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what Mike said. You've got to know how to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together at a 10,000-foot view. But what I've learned as a CISO is that you cannot have enough interpersonal skills down. You've got to work with other teams and know how to persuade and influence. So I would say, don't just focus on your technical skills, but start taking classes and start working on building relationships with other teams and stakeholders, because that is desperately necessary as a CISO, or else you get nothing done.
All right, so let me ask you specifically what the two of you did. Were there things that you did, consciously saying, oh, hey, I want to be a CISO, I want people to start respecting me as a leader? Were there conscious decisions that you made?
So when I was starting to make that decision, I was very long into my career. So I was at Salesforce at the time, and Salesforce has great leadership training opportunities. So for me,
So you got lucky and fortunate in that respect.
well, I sought those classes out. So
Right.
to
But
what
they were
Olivia was
available.
saying,
Not a lot of companies has a deep education base like Salesforce.
but you can go and enroll in those courses. Many companies will have educational grants or whatever as part of your benefits that you can then go and spend and learn. Don't spend all of those monies on the latest cool security class. Spend some of those monies on that leadership training that you can go and get, even at community colleges. There are classes out there on that seek them out and use some of that money
So
in
was
those
there
areas.
something, and I'll ask both of you, did you take any leadership classes yourself, Olivia?
This sounds really egocentric, but I actually didn't need to.
Natural leader.
Okay, no.
Have you looked at me? Look.
I mean, hello. No, I came from advisory. I came from consulting for 17 years and from management. So I already had that. What I needed was more technical knowledge. So I had the flip side of where Mike came from. So look at where you're at and where your strengths are and pick up whatever the gaps are. And I'll say, if you are in consulting, it is a great career move to move into CISO-dom, because you've seen a lot of bad situations, and it's a great move for you.
All right, I'm going to ask you one quick question. Isolate one thing that you learned from your classes that you would literally have carried on to today.
My technical classes?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, you were the one who took the classes.
Well,
I'm not
there's
exactly-
other classes.
We settled that I don't need to.
We both take
I
classes.
didn't
No,
need to.
I'm asking about these management classes that you took, Mike.
So I think a lot of them were really around team building and getting a group of people working in a direction. That's especially challenging in the security world. This is the direction we need to all head here. Here's why. Here's the advantage. And so I really think that the team building and that guidance of a team, those courses were the ones that were most useful.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
So if all vendors stopped sending cold emails,
Yes.
which is what we constantly hear CISOs say, like right now, they should do, how should vendors spend their time and money instead to greatly improve their success? So I'm going to ask the two of you, play the role of the vendor. What would you do to get to you? And I'll start with you, Olivia.
Please stop sending cold emails.
No. We've assumed that.
I'm
That's
just-
assumed. That's assumed.
We're already in this great
We're
new
now
world.
the next step. So
Okay.
what would you do to get to you? The effort is, there is another Olivia Rose, your clone,
Oof,
on
scary.
some other planet.
Okay.
And you want to sell some security solution to her.
Okay.
What is your technique?
Understand this business is all about trust. So that comes in the form of trust in products, trust in services. I only use companies where I know somebody that I trust. If Mike says on one of the CISO Slack forums that XYZ company is great, I will go buy it, or at least look at it.
Did you buy right off of a mic recommendation that
No,
quick?
no. I said I would look at it.
As an example.
I would look at it, contemplate it. So instead of the cold emails, spend that time looking at ways to build out your relationships based on who you have in common. LinkedIn does it for you. Ask for the introduction. Don't be a nag. Don't just keep reaching out cold. Just ask for that introduction. At these events, there are so many salespeople who don't come up to us at all. But if you do, it's welcome, as long as you don't talk business right off the start. Build that relationship trust. And that is how you get in the door.
You would agree with this?
So I would, and
Do you have anything to add?
probably. So in general, I look at things as long games. And I think this is one area where it pays to build those relationships, to build them with either the CISO who you're trying to sell to directly and recognize that you're not going to get that sale right away, or working with their other peers. Work with your advisors. Work with people that you already have a close relationship with, and they will help you in those other areas and help you further build those relationships where you are more respected and where you have that reputation. One of the other areas that I would say is, and honestly, this is not pandering to this audience, but these community-generated, community-run security conferences, get in front of these. Sponsor these conferences.
I agree.
Present at these conferences. RSA is fine, whatever. I guarantee you it's not only cheaper to sponsor here and participate here, but it's also more impactful. And there are BSides events all over the place. There are other community-generated security conferences. Show up to those, keep showing up to those, and then people, when they go and look for a widget in your area, they'll know your name and they'll reach out to you and have that conversation.
I'm going to throw this out again, and we did a similar question like this, Mike, and you blew the softball yet again. The other option is to sponsor this show. I just want to throw that out. That is another option of how to get the community. But I think actually one of my main concerns with that recommendation that you're making, which, by the way, excellent, is the measurability of it, and these vendors don't feel they know how to measure something like that, and therefore determine how successful or not successful it is. So,
but I'll jump on that right away and say they can measure the number of badges that they scan at RSA, but that isn't still telling them how effective that was.
I agree so wholeheartedly, and I believe that the main source of the problem of the sort of the vendor CISO conflict is incentive structure. I truly, truly believe that. So my question is, how then, and I think a lot of people will be like, okay, I'm on board. How do I measure exactly what you guys talked about?
I think you have to basically backload your measures, right? Recognize that a new salesperson, a new account exec, that they've got new territory or whatever. You have to give them time to build up the relationships rather than trying to manage and measure them right away. Give them that time, give them that runway, and then you'll find out over the year the dollars that they generate are greater if you're giving them that runway. So I think a lot of the measures are still similar, but you just phase them.
Extend the
Yes.
runway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
I do agree. It's not about the number of badges. It's about the number of responses back that are warm, that are positive. So in countless cases, I've met someone, got along great with them in California. They say, hey, I'm in Atlanta for coffee. Great. If you're coming up to where I'm at, so I don't need to go very far, then we'll meet for coffee. And I do want to say one thing about these events like this. It says a lot that you're here on a weekend. It
Yes.
means you
Yes.
have that added love of security, and that's what we look for. So just being here puts you ahead of the rest.
Who's our sponsor this week?
It's Vulcan Cyber. They're one of two of our sponsors, and let me tell you about them. You know, in vulnerability management, our goal, Vulcan Cyber's goal, is clear. Find vulnerabilities, or actually, it's not just Vulcan Cyber, it's everybody's goal is that. But identify the most critical ones and fix them. While there are plenty of tools for detection and prioritization, when it comes to remediation, we seem to hit a wall. How could it be that with all of these new tools and technologies, we still can't seem to remediate our vulnerabilities on time? Now we can. Introducing Vulcan, the vulnerability management platform built for remediation. Pioneering a remediation orchestration approach, Vulcan takes threat and vulnerability management beyond prioritization. The platform enables effective remediation in 3 steps. First, highlighting the organization's biggest risks. Then, analyzing, finding, and delivering the right solution for each vulnerability through the tools you already use. And finally, initiating and orchestrating cross-team remediation workflows. Now, vulnerabilities can actually be fixed and not just discovered. Vulcan, stop managing, start fixing.
It's time to play What's Worse?
Is this when we leave?
Bye. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. All right. For those of you who know this game, What's Worse, the title kind of says it all. I'm going to provide you with 2 options here. Both stink, I should mention. They're awful. You're not going to like them, but you have to choose between one of the 2 items. So, we have 2 rounds of the game we're going to play. And the first one comes from Michael Martinez of C-Focus Software Incorporated. And he asked this what's worse scenario. And by the way, Olivia, you do get a little bit of a breather because I always make Mike answer first.
Sweet.
An unencrypted database with multi-factor authentication in a high physical threat environment, that's option 1, or an encrypted database with a single factor authentication in a high virtual threat environment. Which one is worse?
So what we're really trying to balance here is the likelihood of compromise, right? And kind of your path forward. If you're in, maybe it's in some storage closet somewhere that someone could very easily walk into, but that was the unencrypted database, right?
Yes, that's the high physical threat environment.
High physical has encryption or does not?
It does not, unencrypted.
So again, could theoretically walk in, but would be really difficult to compromise remotely versus the other one, great, it's encrypted, but your remote threat is someone, doesn't matter where they are.
Right.
For me, I always look at the likelihood, right?
Right.
And there's the threat and the likelihood of that threat taking action. In a remote environment, it's very easy for someone to attack that remotely, and there's that many more people who could somehow come in and attack it.
Right.
In the converse, where it's even though there's a higher likelihood of potential compromise due to physical access, there's a less number of people who can do that.
But again, it's also unencrypted, the database. So once they get their hands on it, it's pretty much home free.
They both suck, David.
Yeah, I know. That's the
both
point
suck.
of the game.
So, again, comparing these two, really the one that I feel is the worst is something that's easy to compromise remotely, even if it's, encrypted at rest. You're that much more exposed, that many more threat actors.
All right. So you're going with the worst scenario. It's the second scenario, the encrypted database, high virtual threat environment. Olivia, where do you stand? Agree, disagree? Again, I always like it when people disagree with Mike.
I would politely disagree.
Don't be polite
You
about
don't
it.
even have to be polite about it.
Not politely disagree.
Why do you disagree?
You're
Vehemently.
wrong.
Great. Prove me wrong.
I would think. Now you said it's in a cloud environment, right? The remote one.
No, it's not known if it's in the cloud or not. No, we
Oh.
don't have that.
Oh, okay. That
Oh,
does
that
change my
changes
answer.
everything.
That does change
I didn't
everything.
say it's in a cloud environment.
Oh, okay. All right.
I just say that there's a high virtual threat in the section.
Okay, actually, then I would look at the physical controls. I would look at my level of comfort with the employees, and I actually would say the worst case scenario, I would in that case agree with Mike. And the reason is because if it were a cloud environment, you need more specialized skills to be able to know how to access, and then it's also encrypted. So in my mind,
but it's not. It could just be sitting on a server, sitting right over there.
but I wouldn't have it in a closet.
She was agreeing with me, David.
I was agreeing with her. Stop. There is no good answer.
All right. All right, we got our second question here. This one comes from Mark Butler
I didn't know
from
there was
Megaplan IT.
Oh, hey, Mark.
We have agreement on the first one.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll have disagreement on the second one. Here we go. Having an unlimited budget for third-party outsourcing of your security function and just keeping oversight internally, or you get a small group of internal team players who know the environment inside and out and are slowly building out their security skills. So,
Yeah.
Mike.
Basically, what you've got here is you're outsourcing your security team versus not.
Right, but you
And-
got a
and-
lot of money to outsource.
Right. So it's unlimited funds.
Not in the second case, though. You
Right.
just got a small group of internal team players who know their stuff, but they're a small group.
So I'll go ahead and say these are both actually workable. It's really more of which one is best rather than which one is worst in this one.
Well, the game is called What's
I
Worse,
know.
Mike. How many times have you played this
once
game?
or twice. Okay. But I ran into a company that, large global brand that you've all heard of, that all they have internally is security architects, and they've outsourced everything, and it's actually very effective for them. Versus an internal security team that they know everything, they're that much more effective on a person-by-person basis. That they can go and get things done. They know who to talk to. They know what to do, and they have more potential. In these two, the one that I would actually prefer is the smaller, more effective team.
So the worst
because
is
of the
having
potential.
unlimited budget with the outsourcing.
And it's funny how I keep answering these that the worst is usually having unlimited budget. That seems to be.
So you know what you're
seems to be a
signaling
theme.
to your company right now? You're saying, I really don't need any
don't-
money.
I don't need money.
Every time I
Yeah,
ask for money,
I'll-
just decline it.
I'll make do.
All right. Olivia, do you agree or disagree here?
It depends on the answer to this. So, if I outsource it, do I still get to keep my internal team?
No, all that your internal team
Small
is,
team.
you're just keeping some oversight internally of the outsourced team. So you don't have that internal team. The level that you have is you're just oversight of the external team, the third-party team.
Again, yeah, I agree with Mike. Where there's no
for
wait.
two. Once again,
Wait,
you're
hold on,
disappointed.
hold your horses. Where there is no what's worse here. It's more about the level of control. So in my mind, I would look at the situation as how much do I feel in control of my environment? Am I okay with losing that control and outsourcing it? And in this case, if I do have a small internal team that's very good at what they do and they're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I think I would still outsource it, and I would put that excitement and that enthusiasm of the internal team onto something else.
Well, so you're disagreeing with him.
Oh, am I? Well, that's even
Yes.
better. Yes,
He
so I'm
chose-
disagreeing with
He chose the other way. So you're disagreeing. So awesome. We have a disagreement on the second one.
Who's our sponsor this week?
All right, our second sponsor, as you can see up on the giant screen, for those of you in the room, it's CyberArk. And let me tell you about them. Privileged accounts, credentials, and secrets are everywhere, on premises, in the cloud, on endpoints, and across DevOps environments. From personally identifiable customer information to critical intellectual property, they provide access to your enterprise's most valuable assets. And attackers are after them right now. Recognized for establishing the privilege access management category, CyberArk continues to deliver the industry's most complete solution to reduce risk created by privileged credentials and secrets. CyberArk is the #1 provider in privilege access management, a critical layer of IT security to protect data, infrastructure, and assets across the enterprise, on premises, in the cloud, on endpoints, and throughout the DevOps pipeline. Secure privilege and stop attacks with CyberArk.
What do you think of this vendor marketing tactic?
So according to a recent study by Valimail, CISOs are very suspect of security vendors' claims. In general, the numbers are horrible for vendor credibility. Close to half of security professionals claim the following: vendors' tech and explanation are confusing, practitioners have a hard time seeing and measuring value, and practitioners don't know how a vendor's product will stay valid on the security roadmap. So I'm going to ask you, I'll start with you, Olivia, what could cybersecurity vendors do to make their claims more believable, and how could you see an easy way to look for yourself and test it out? What makes you believe, maybe answer this question, what makes you believe a cybersecurity vendor's claim?
Well, I would say this, anything that comes from the marketing group, stop.
Well, that's how they usually come.
Right, but if I was a salesperson and I really wanted to get in front of a C-level or a senior security leader, just smile and nod at your marketing team. Yes, we're using your collateral, and then throw it away. Because my 3 main points are, and I've said this before in this awesome show, is just tell me what it does, what are the benefits in simple language, and bullet points preferably, and then how is it going to help me with my type of company and my strategic security roadmap.
But hold on, I'm gonna totally argue with you, because that's the point of the marketing department, is to hopefully simplify what is normally complicated stuff. I have actually done videos like this where I ask people to dumb down, simplify complicated technology, and often people have trouble with that. So my hope is the marketing department does stuff like that.
I have a background in marketing for security companies, so I know. And I come from the vendor side.
So I would hope you have done good for your companies that you work with.
No, because I was always the consultant, the advisory.
So
I didn't have
never
control.
hire Olivia for any cybersecurity marketing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right.
But my point is here that marketing likes to use big words. They don't truly understand technology, the landscape. I mean, how many times, Mike, have you received an email saying there are big threats out there, or CISOs have to spend all their time worrying about threats? It's like, tell me
Surprise.
something I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the marketing department. So if I were you, get with your security and pre-sales engineers, try to tap into what exactly are the fine points of what you're trying to sell. And the marketing materials are honestly just fluff.
I'm going to argue, I think this is also often the curse of knowledge, why sometimes they can't do it, is because the people who are deep in the product can't see outside sometimes. But Mike, let me throw it to you. What gets you to believe a vendor's claim?
Well, I think some of Olivia's advice, all of Olivia's advice was good, but really about being very specific. And marketing does tend to be very broad, and so to try and target and try and be very specific. But when I was thinking about this question, a while ago I'd made a claim that proof of concepts are the new PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. And I think if you make your demos easy, if you just allow me to click through to a demo. Don't make me sign up to a list, and have the demo really explain and illustrate to me what it does. I'm that much closer to understanding the value.
So I'm amazed that you say that. So I actually did something that's for a client. We produced a demo video for them. And I talk to vendors all the time, and I say, what sells your product the most? He goes, well, if we get to sit down and do a demo with them, then we get, X
Don't
percentage.
sit down.
No.
Whatever. So to which I always say, do you have a demo video of your product online? And they go, all of them say no.
Right.
All. 100. I do not comprehend that. If you don't have a demo video of your product, get one up immediately.
Yeah, I would say have
Or
the demo.
screenshots.
Demo video, screenshot, something that can tell me what to expect. That's the teaser to get me to actually spend the time on the demo.
Yeah.
And certainly not every product or service is something that can have a self-guided demo. But if you can do it, and you'll find it, you'll find people will pick it up.
Put up a video of the person demoing how the product works.
Yep. Worst case.
That works as well.
Close your eyes and visualize the perfect engagement.
So Rafael Los of Armor Cloud Security asks, if you could implement one thing in your organization that will receive universal adoption without pushback, what would it be? So the question, which kind of seems reasonable, but in the security world often feels impossible, generated a ton of responses. Many wanted company-wide adoption of a single solution, such as MFA or vulnerability management. Others just wanted widespread and ongoing security education. So I'm going to ask you the same question Rafael asked, which is, Mike, what do you think is the one pushback-free solution that would yield the greatest results?
As I was reading the thread, I was, thinking, MFA, RBAC, SSO, auditing, these are all great. I would love to have these. And I kept reading, and there was one that was about pervasive network monitoring, that, instrument everything. And it was an interesting answer, but I think it's a little bit behind the times where that the networks are all encrypted these days, so this isn't really buying you a whole lot. And it dawned on me, the one that I would really like, if I could be guaranteed no pushback, and this is the key on this one.
That's it. That's the whole point.
If I'm guaranteed no pushback, is true pervasive application whitelisting. If I push out application whitelisting to an entire environment that I'm controlling everything that gets run, I'm done. I can basically I can now enjoy my weekends. I can take nice long vacations.
What?
So
Weekend? What is a weekend?
It's that simple. Just deploy application whitelisting, Olivia.
Wow.
But there is a lot of pushback there. This is one of those
that's
technologies.
not the point. I'm just saying, what's the one thing that would yield the greatest results if you could do it?
So we did this. A company I worked for Salesforce. We actually deployed application whitelisting. It was an utter pain in the ass. It took us 2 or 3 years. But we never had to worry about our Windows environment anymore. The thing that we used only worked on Windows. It kernel panicked all of our Macs, so we didn't use it there. But it really meant that Windows was now quote unquote safe for us, and we could spend all of our time on the Mac side. It was high effort, but it was absolutely worth it. The payoff is there. If you can do it without pushback, application whitelisting 100%.
All right. So what do you think? What's the one thing, no pushback, you would love yield the biggest results?
I still love this question. I spent 2 hours of my 5-hour plane flight just kind of staring into space, thinking, I would, Gary, turn your phone off. What I would love, because you said things, so it doesn't need to be technology, anything,
Yep.
right?
It could be one request.
The idea of having a member of my team who I know and trust, and I know is smart, situated on every single one of my stakeholder teams, but they belong to me.
Mm-hmm. So you essentially have a spy in every department. Is
Yes.
that the idea?
Yes. Yes. But they're
Spies.
integrated. So they're dotted line to the
So
stakeholder.
they're good spies.
They're good. Is there any bad?
Yeah.
Okay. But hackers. But just the idea of being able to integrate with the business so tightly that way with all my stakeholder teams, but yet having that direct conduit, that would be nirvana to me.
So first of all, how hard is it to get that kind of information from all the teams currently?
Are you seriously asking me this, David?
Yes, I'm asking you that question.
It's kind of mixed. It's between pulling teeth and drilling your own tooth.
So is it what do you if you had a conduit of what would you want to learn on a daily basis from another department?
For example, I would want to know how they're configuring firewall rule sets instead of just having visibility into them every quarter per se, for example, if they own the firewalls.
Okay. So and just trying to find out that information is difficult.
Well, it can be. So I would like to have someone on that team so that person can help govern and help define and build the best practices and not even possibly manage it, but there would be a clear line of event escalation of, hey, this is a weird thing. The firewall folks don't think it's a bad thing, but from a security perspective, we think it is. Having that direct line of communication, it would be just wonderful.
How much communication do you have in your office, Mike?
So I've only been there 3.5 months now, but it actually is a fair amount. Teams are very open with what they're doing. We have team members. I don't have one person, but I have multiple team members who are assigned to individual teams where they are sitting in on their meetings, where they are that bidirectional trusted advisor. So I guess I do have good spies. But it's difficult, and the company has to be ready for it.
Yes, it's very difficult. It's a culture change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would assume it's a culture change if you're going to have spies.
It's time for the audience question speed round.
All right, in this hand right here, I have a series of index cards of questions that people, just random people here at B-Sides, have asked. And I am here to ask you these questions for you to answer them. And some of them are, the people have revealed their names, some are anonymous. But this person who I believe in the audience right now, Paul Lanzi of Remediant. Yes, you're here.
I saw him earlier there.
Yeah, there he is, there he is. All right, he asked this question. What do you think will be on your risk register 24 months from now? Mike.
Wow. So this is really looking into the future and also thinking about what I can remove from my risk register between here and there.
Oh, you always had to pull one off to put one on?
Right. It's a last in first out kind
Okay.
of thing. That's really kind of looking forward for what are the concerns, what are the global concerns of security between here and there. And if I look forward down the road, I still think I'm going to have to deal with my vendors. I still think I'm going to have on my risk register the security of vendors, and it might be one particular that.
Is there anything new? I'm sorry. I should
anything new?
Anything new?
A new vendor?
A new vendor. Yeah, new vendors will be on there.
Yes. It's hard to say. That's really.
Olivia, you got a good. What do you think is going to be in risk register 24 months now? It's not on it currently.
I work for a product company, so there's always new features coming out and promotions. And those have heavy implications for, I run abuse prevention as well, for security and abuse prevention. So I would say those are always new, plus our friends in, foreign places.
Okay.
That's a hard question to answer.
Well, you can't answer it. All right. You guys do better on this.
It's a hard question.
It's,
What's your
error who asked
I
the
need
question.
quick answer. This is speed round. What's your most successful method for aligning with the business? This comes from Chris Pattison of RSA.
So that's the architects that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Really carving up the company into sets of teams, products, horizontals, verticals, whatever it is, and assigning them someone who sits with them, who's working with them all the time, who's a long-term partner and doesn't have to be brought up to speed on any new assessments.
Okay. What's your most successful method, Olivia? That's a good one.
I would say not enough. My successful way is listening, because I think too many people don't listen, so they don't understand the strategic drivers of the business. So if you think you're not listening enough, listen better. If you think that's enough, listen more, because unless you understand the drivers, you cannot align what you're doing to the business.
All right. Next question. This comes from someone anonymous. How do you make sure, Mike, your users are on VPNs on captive portals like Starbucks?
I hate VPNs.
Why don't you like VPNs?
I think my endpoints should be able to protect themselves regardless of what network they're on, and routing them through some sort of what is frankly multiple layers of encryption because they're already talking TLS in the first place. Wrapping that through another level of encryption doesn't help. And in fact, what you've done is you've created a new entry point into your environment that someone can attack to get into your environment. Just look at all the recent Citrix vulnerabilities, the recent, I think Cisco and Juniper have both had them. Every one of these gateways has vulnerabilities that are actively being exploited. Your only making your security worse by forcing everyone through VPNs.
You agree or disagree with this, or do you have some way to force people to use VPNs, Olivia?
Well, I don't think you can force anyone to do anything, right? Unless it's transparent, like you were saying. However, you can initiate change if you do it carefully, but I think that you have to show people, it's all about security awareness. I mean, I know that's a boring answer, but if people truly want to protect the company and they understand why you need to use a VPN or safeguard your company assets or whatever it is, you have a better chance of enforcing that change.
All right. Here's another question from Jim McLeod of Indeni. He says, since your firewall is mission critical, should you upgrade to the latest OS, or because it's mission critical, should you not upgrade to the latest OS since you know how this OS operates? I'll start with you, Olivia.
Oh, is this what's worse?
It is a kind of a what's worse. It is a what's worse question.
Can I say it depends on this one?
You can.
Yeah, because we're not playing
you
what's
have
worse.
that.
We don't usually let it depends play in what's worse. But since this is the final speed round, you can throw it out.
It depends what the upgrade is. It depends.
Yeah, but you don't know what it is. Like, you don't know how it's going to damage things when you upgrade.
Oh, my brain hurts. I'm going to give this to Mike.
Mike, clear, concise answer. Take us out.
So a lot of this is preparation, being prepared for the eventuality that you're going to have to upgrade your firewall, that whatever you have on your network, you're eventually going to have to upgrade it. So have your architecture, your systems, your environment such that this isn't a hard question, that when the question comes up,
Because
you
it
can
will.
because it will, you're prepared for it, you're ready to do the right thing. Upgrading to patch whatever critical vulnerability isn't going to be painful because you're ready for it.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. I have to thank you, Mike and Olivia, and I have to thank BSides San Francisco for inviting us to be a part of this, and I have to thank this audience, everyone who is still in this crowd. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I want to remind our listeners that we are doing shows this week, March 3rd and March 5th in New York City and Boston, respectively. I want to thank our sponsors, CyberArk and Vulcan. Go check them out if you haven't already. They're awesome because they sponsor our show. We like our sponsors. Olivia, we'll let you have the last word. I appreciate you being available for this live show. So thank you very much. But before we let you speak, Mike.
Olivia, thank you for coming back on again. Thank you for coming back onto the show and being willing to subject yourself to not only one but two what's worse questions. So thank you for coming back. Specifically, I liked when you were talking about your path to CISO, and reminding folks that there are multiple paths and explaining what worked for you and how you got there. So specifically, thank you for that. But in general, thank you for coming on the show and sharing with our audience.
And Olivia, I would also advise anybody who works in marketing for a security vendor that if you meet Olivia, just tell them you're an engineer. Olivia, any last words?
I'm not available for marketing opportunities. Well, I'm hiring security operations engineers. If you live in Atlanta or Oakland, check out MailChimp on LinkedIn.com. I would love to hire some really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed folks.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. I have to just say thank you so much for coming out to see our live show. We love performing in front of live audiences. This is the largest I've ever seen our logo ever get,
Huge
which is
logo.
pretty spectacular. So thank you so much for listening and, as always, participating in the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast.